Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sacred Heart College for Women, Chalagudi. Let me begin today's session with a caption, Stories So Far. So far, we have discussed 4 major concepts related to Module 1 of Language and Linguistics paper prescribed for 3rd BA English Language and Literature students. First, what is language? Second, definitions of language. Third, design features of language. And fourth, essential differences between human language and animal language. Today's NU session is on differences between speech and writing. Speech and writing are considered to be 2 forms of communication. They are regarded as 2 modes of communication. They are also designated as 2 different manifestations of language. The traditional grammarians attached much importance to the written form. So, spoken form was regarded as inferior to the written form according to the traditional grammarians. The traditional grammarians prescribed grammar rules and they allowed no deviation from the so-called strict grammar rules. Not only that, they believed in the authenticity of the language of literature written by socially accepted writers, and according to them, these languages should be considered as the models for further language study. The present-day linguists, the modern linguists, they were of different opinion. According to the present-day linguists, spoken form was considered as superior to the written form. They identified, they recognized the primacy of speech. And in order to support their argument, they said that speech begins earlier than writing. Children learn first to speak their mother tongue and later on they attempt to write. So much for the different views on, contending views on the superiority of spoken and written forms as far as the traditional grammarians and the modern day linguists are concerned. Now, let's try to brief the differences between spoken language and written language into different points for better understanding and comprehensibility. So, let me start. What we are going to learn is the differences between spoken language and written language. Speech is considered to be short-lived, whereas writing preserves valuable literature and thoughts of eminent persons for the sake of posterity. Variations of pitch and stress can be represented in spoken form but cannot be represented in written form. Additional meanings can be derived from the facial expressions and gestures of the speakers. Whereas in case of writing, you need to understand the alphabet and punctuation marks to derive additional meanings. Spoken language is often considered to be spontaneous, natural, whereas written language is always planned, well drafted, and well organized. Spoken language is relatively informal, more or less informal. There may be exceptions when you take into account the formal speeches that we all make. In case of writing, it will always be formal and structured, well structured. Speech makes use of simple vocabularies, simple sentences that are understandable even to the common men, even to the laymen, whereas writing uses complex vocabulary and sentences. Contractions are permissible in case of speech, whereas contractions are generally frowned upon in case of writing. And now another difference is this, hesitations, repetitions, and then exclamations, okay? They are common in case of speech, but those are not found in case of written language, okay? Now, incomplete utterances are found in case of speech, but incomplete utterances are generally absent in case of written language. In case of speech, you will often come across instant feedback from the receiver. Okay, you come to understand from the facial expressions of the listeners whether your speech is of interest to them or whether it is essentially a kind of boredom to them. Okay, in case of writing, instant feedback is totally absent. And the last point of difference between speech and writing is that colloquial expressions are allowed in spoken language, whereas colloquial expressions, non-standard abbreviations are not allowed in case of written language. Now, to conclude, both spoken and written varieties have their own value and significance. Both of them should be considered as different manifestations of language. One form cannot claim superiority over the other. So that's all about the differences between speech and writing. And in the next video presentation, I will be coming up with another concept related to the field of language study. Until we meet again, goodbye and stay tuned.